out of a certain situation that evolved in my life. My cousin got into a car accident in Dubai. He flew out of the windshield. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He fell head first into the concrete, and he was declared kind of brain dead, right? Everyone that leaves their PhD will have to contend with this issue because you were spoiled in your PhD in terms of innovative potential. And my uncle was like, oh my God, McKinsey. Especially old school finance guy. I was like, yo, this is it. You've made it. You go from research where everything is chill, vibing. You can do a project over the span of 8 months. It doesn't work out. It's fine. And then out of nowhere, it's like 6 weeks. If it should have been delivered 2 weeks before. I was like, whoa, man, how are we gonna get everything ready? Just go.
You finished your PhD. You started teaching for around a year in MIT and Harvard. How was that experience? And then how did you decide that, okay, you know what, I don't want to do all this education stuff. I want to move to corporate. Tell me a bit more about that.
Sounds like the biggest sellout. So no, I went to Harvard. I applied to Harvard for a postdoc. So it was a postdoctoral fellowship. So as part of your responsibilities, you can teach. You have a certain amount of money which is allocated to you to do research. So I transitioned from cancer research into neuroscience. And the reason for that, again, is something which was driven out of a certain situation that evolved in my life. My cousin got into a car accident in Dubai. He flew out of the windshield. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He fell head first into the concrete, and he was declared kind of brain dead, right? But the problem is that in Dubai, at the time, from what I think at least, it was very challenging to kind of equate brain death with death. And so to take my cousin off the machine wasn't an option, I think, at the time. One option that the family was considering anyway. And so that inspired me to go into neuroscience. I started working there, trying to get into traumatic brain injury research. I worked on consciousness and what it means to sleep. And I love that because sleep is obviously like a fundamental cornerstone of any Arab. So I was like, yo, hell yeah, man, if I can learn more about sleeping and doing better sleep, I'll do that. The models were different. So I moved from doing kind of more survival-based models in cancer research to kind of hierarchical models, so more time series modeling in the neuroscience space. You have a lot more data that comes from fMRI, for example, that you can kind of mine for patterns, but you also have a lot of time series data, like EEG data, right? It's not necessarily the best, it doesn't give you the best spatial context, which means that you don't necessarily know exactly what's happening everywhere because you only have a limited number of nodes everywhere, but you have the data to be able to kind of ascertain what's happening generally in certain areas.
What's the activity in the brain, basically.
Very high resolution, very, very high sampling frequency. So that was something new. I thought it was cool, but then at some point, I got a call from my mom and she was like, so how's that professor thing going? Because I was trying to be a professor. I was like, why not? And I was like, Mom, I got 4 years left on this postdoc. And she was like, wow, how about you come home and make money?
Fair shout.
She was like, you've done education. That's it. Like you got to level 99.
I mean, Cambridge and Harvard and MIT, leave something for the rest of us.
It's like you finished leveling up Charizard, man. Focus on Charmander. What's his name? Blastoise. To do something else with him. So I was like, okay, cool, colors. Done.
I did what I had to do.
I was like, yeah, man. So I hanged up my Harvard hoodie and I was like, time to go back. And I started applying for jobs everywhere. I had got an offer from Uber in San Francisco at the time, but man, 8 months without my family was enough to say, tough. Uncle, let's stay in the UK. And I started applying for random companies, and most companies were starting to get really up and coming in the data science space, and they wanted people that kind of were freshly out of university that could bring a more nuanced technical approach, that they could build the models that they were selling. And
this is around 2018, 19.
That's it, yeah. So November 2018 is when I got my offer from McKinsey. Wow. I didn't know what McKinsey was. I'm not gonna lie, I had no idea. I sent off the application form on LinkedIn, and my uncle was like, oh my God, McKinsey. Especially old school finance guy. I was like, yo, this is it. You've made it. So I had no idea what it was at the time, and I thought we did finance or something. It's trading. I had no idea. And then I got the offer from them. I go there. I'm wearing a suit for the first time, graphite. I felt so uncomfortable. But yeah, that was my first. That was me selling out, man. That
was the first time you.
That's it.
Started real life corporate. And
I have to say, for a first time job, McKinsey is crazy.
It's intense.
You go
It's
from
intense.
research where everything is chill, vibing. You can do a project over the span of 8 months. It doesn't work out. It's fine. And then out of nowhere, there's like 6 weeks. If your model wasn't,
Yeah.
it should have been delivered 2 weeks before.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
whoa, man, how are we gonna get everything ready? Just go.
Yes. No, it's very, very intense.
Yeah.
And what did you feel like for you? What were the expectations like when you were doing your PhD, your postdoc? Were you really keen on staying in education, or you were like, okay, I'm ready to go to corporate. I don't mind, like, not applying. I mean, you definitely applied the technical part of what you've learned, but all the scientific part. Do you feel that, oh, I'm not applying this anymore, or has it benefited you in a way in the corporate, throughout your corporate journey, basically?
Everyone that leaves their PhD will have to contend with this issue because you were spoiled in your PhD in terms of innovative potential. You could try, most PhDs could try any idea, read any paper, spend so much time just enveloped by literature. It's such a beautiful time of your life. At the time, you hate it because you're broke, right? Like, oh my God, I'm eating cup noodle every single day. What's my life? But, when you leave that time of your life and out of nowhere, it's like, okay, damn, I have to only build linear models now because, for example, at McKinsey, we would build, credit risk models for regulators that would, impose very strict conditions. Your model had to be a linear model. The variables had to be interpretable, right? Every single one of the decision variables had to be fully explainable, like the logic behind it. There was no black box, throw XG booster it, go, let's see what happens. This had to be very, very precise because, there's so many different regulatory authorities that are making sure that what you're doing, it benefits everyone involved.
Yes.
And so you really have to kind of accept the fact that whatever you do from a research perspective from now on has to be your own little project you do on the side. And, you can try and be a little bit more innovative with how you deliver a project, right? How you choose the features, how you go about it, how you explain it. But in terms of thinking you're going to go and, at the time anyway, use neural networks for everything, it was crazy. It was a crazy thing.
I think what you need to deliver is very clear, right? Because they set the expectations with the client. Everything has to be explained to the client, which might not be a technical stakeholder at all. So I think maybe that was was it a struggle for you, like going from talking, all these terms with these professors and your like fellow students and colleagues, and then going to a boardroom with people who don't know anything about machine learning. So
I loved it, man.
That was a good.
I wish I did McKinsey before I did my PhD. And the reason why is because when you learn that project management toolkit, when you know how to think to yourself, okay, this is what I need to deliver. You have a fully formed project. You know who your stakeholders are, what the deliverables are at every single milestone. If, when in McKinsey, you learn all these things about issue trees and, how to do MISI,
yes.
mutually exclusive.
Yes. It's like
comprehensively now. Completely exhaustive. Yes.
Yeah.
So you fully plan out a project. You have contingency plans for everything that goes wrong.
So
you never feel yourself kind of getting lost. You always find a way to be able to redirect yourself back. And during my PhD, there were plenty of times when I got lost.
Yeah.
So I love that aspect.
Yes.
The main part I didn't love that much was the fact that you can't be as researchy as you want to be. But at the same time, that wasn't the nature of the job. But I was naive and young, and I was like, no, I demand to be able to use neural networks anytime I want. And they were like, no.
Fair. And for those of like students who are keen on analytics and data science, what would a person in that area do at McKinsey? Like, if you can walk us through high level, like a project you worked on, just for people to understand, what would a technical person or an analytics person do at a consulting company?
McKinsey was really cool because they were very secretive about everything.
Secretive?
Yeah, so I can't even tell you the client name, but...
Of course, no. I was like, just type of projects, like improving X or...
We had this like kind of this retreat, and it was for the risk practice, and like I thought we'd get McKinsey merchandise or something because there was no merch, and the only thing that we got was a sticker that said risk. That was, and I put that on my iPhone, right, and everyone was like, "What is this, man?" I was like, "This is my team."
That's all we do, right?
That's it. Don't even ask where I work. So yeah, McKinsey. So a typical day in the life might be like, you get tasked on a project, right? The engagement manager will task you as a data science sort of like kind of specialist. At the time, they had a really kind of like a data science fellow is what they called it. But they will task you to come along, and you might be involved in what's called the initial value proposition, which is what you present to the client to kind of say, look, we identify this area where value can be added. We want to be able to explore with you whether or not this is true. To do that, we need to spend a couple of weeks there, understanding what the current state is, looking at what your current operating model looks like, and then looking at your target operating model, right, and then seeing what you need to be able to get from A to B. To do that, we're going to use data. So therefore, I come in, and then when the workflow gets developed, right, at some point, if you are somebody kind of like close to operations or close to the work, you might be involved in that side of the planning, which is cool because you get to see
the business side of things.
You get to be somebody in the room with like CXO level people, right, like in a certain bank. And so at some point I was involved with discussions with people at very, very high positions as a data scientist. And so I was like, this is so cool because I get to interact with these stakeholders and understand how they see data science. How do they see the problem? How can I translate that problem into a data science problem? So for example, if they want to understand what are the main impediments to growth in this particular sector as a result of certain other variables, in the market changing, understanding that question and then designing a workflow around that's able to deliver what they need on time is a very cool problem. So that was one side of the work, right? It was in the planning side. On the execution side, so now that you have your plan, time to go ahead and do stuff, right? Like you have to interact or engage with the data members or the machine learning kind of side on the client side. So that's where you speak to the data engineer. That's where you speak to the data scientists on their side. You might speak to some of the programmers on their side. Because I worked in risk, I would speak to some of the risk team on their side as well that were very, very statistically affluent. They would really understand like what they wanted from this project. Those stakeholder relationships that you build alongside your engagement manager, but you also have to manage them yourself. That's sometimes not the case in tech, which we'll get to later, but in McKinsey, it was very necessary to build up a good relationship because remember, when you go to the client side, you're going to be there with your team, with the client team for a very long time, right? And the way that you build up that relationship dictates how the relationship evolves, but 100%. Also over time, if you're able to then secure further projects with them to be able to kind of like continue to deliver impact on their projects. And so you want to make sure that not only are you delivering on the data science part, which is something that a lot of people can learn. It's not something which is as esoteric as people believe. The hard part and the part where you really deliver impact and whether you deliver a successful project or not is where you're able to deliver what the stakeholders needed you to deliver. Were you able to do it in a way that that made it enjoyable to the entire team?
Communicate it well, I'm assuming, because they're you have also the non-technical audience from the client are probably the more senior people.
That's it.
That need to understand what's happening because at the end of the day they're paying from their budget. So
that's it. You can't just sit there and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to assume they understand and carry on. No, like you need to make sure that
they will make sure you tell them what you did exactly.